that have been really on my mind about balance and even society. Like, does it feel like the weight of the world is on your shoulders? And maybe even answering a little bit of the question of what's wrong with our kids? Why can't they value something we think is important? For example, like TikTok. Well, I want to explain how we parents do the same thing. So if you ever balance water on your head, you can understand, or anything heavy, that with balance you can actually carry something that is very heavy a very long way. But if you didn't have it balanced, it would not only hurt your neck, but if you had it on your shoulder, right, it's going to put way more stress and weight. So the first point is that without balance, things are going to fall over. And when your pot of water is falling off your head, you're trying to catch it. You're not worrying about your kids, and you're not worrying about the things that are the most important because you really have no choice. And this isn't to put any blame on anybody, it's to try to understand what are we doing and what's happening here in society, that we're just getting by. And we're saying certain things that are valuable and matter, and we're not really sticking and following those values. But we want our kids to stick to and hold the values of things we think are important. So let's have a little discussion about it. The story of Atlas is the god who carried the burdens of the world on his shoulder. And it could be a metaphor, it could be religious, right? Let God carry the things that are so heavy. Because if anyone needs to help you, because if you carry something alone, it's going to crush you, right? So I want you to keep this mental image of the world crushing you. Doesn't it feel like that sometimes? Students, doesn't it feel like the weight of the world is crushing you? Parents, doesn't it feel like the weight of the world is crushing you? And you see, it's very important we understand the importance of balance even when the weight of the world is crushing us. But could you help your kids do their homework if you're holding up the weight of the world? Can you tell them I love you and I make sure that they feel valued? Can you take interest in the things they're interested in? Can you even pay your bills and taxes if you're so overwhelmed and the world's crushing you? Right? So the few times you do have to carry what seems like the weight of the world, you're going to have to make sure you're balanced or it's going to crush you. And I think that's already happening to a degree. The old days we would say it's oppression. So let's talk about that idea of the weight of the world with a simple triangle. We tell our kids that certain things should matter, and we have a value system. We're saying school should matter, education should matter, family should matter. If you're spiritual, the spiritual or the creator should matter. And so sometimes we wonder, why are our kids looking down at TikTok? Instead of focusing on what we think is important. Kind of like the tip of a spear, right? When you have a spear, the tip matters because the tip is going to kind of lead and direct and guide the rest of the head of the spear going into something. So we need to stop and understand, what are our spear levels, and are we really focusing to the tip of the spear, and more importantly, why? And ultimately that we need balance to be able to see where the tip of the spear is, to really understand what's important. And in a way, my goal is to help you understand it's not necessarily our fault. And it's not to take away blame and responsibility, but just to help understand another different perspective. So, we clearly say our kids are important, and they're the most important. They're the tip of the spear. Our youth, our future, our kids. And above those kids, you have a lot of things. I'll just put a few. You have your parents, right? They're the most direct influence. And some of them are working 2 jobs, 3 jobs. They're physically ill. They're depressed. They're angry. They're controlling. Right? Issues that we want to root out of our kids and try to balance. Sometimes we have a difficulty being honest and seeing, rather than asking what's wrong with the kids, let's look up above. What's wrong with us who are serving our kids and supposed to be valuing our kids? Then you have, the parents' jobs. And oftentimes there's even more than one, because we can't even make a living wage. And things are so difficult, and there's such a struggle that we can't even keep things together. We're struggling with the weight of how much stress, how much work, and how underappreciated we are in those jobs. Then you have the government and society, right? And there are things that we've been experiencing, like COVID. We don't have health care. People have been starving. Okay, homelessness, hunger. So some of us are so busy with the weight of trying to figure out how to even balance the things above us that we kind of almost don't have a choice. I'll explain. So then when we look at the government, you can say, well, that's just the government running things. But they do set the tone, right? Doesn't the government influence how we hate one side and another, Republican and Democrat? Doesn't the government decide if society focuses on COVID relief, which we did not get for many, many months? If society actually does care about homelessness and mental health, rather than continuing to say we care about it, what are we doing to show that? Like someone who's married and says, I love you, but they're cheating and hitting you. What are you doing to show you love me is a good question. So the government, as we've seen, almost every government leadership, right? Don't they sometimes get off balance? Can we be honest? If we don't, maybe it hurts less to talk about others, right? Let's talk about others instead of ourselves. Aren't there people in the government who need therapy? Aren't there people in the government who are angry, who hate? Aren't there people in the government who also have depression, physical pain, their own illnesses? Some of them who don't value some things but value others? Some who are actually spewing hatred and division? Right? Imagine having a family or a parent who's dividing and making one parent hate another and the kids are getting in between. We have that happen sometimes. So more or less we have these things, and you can imagine when you're at the bottom, we kind of tend to look at this and we ask ourselves, why can't these kids focus on what matters? Why are they on TikTok? Why are they on Instagram? Why are they on Facebook? Why are they on the social media? And right, why aren't they focused on their priorities? And let's take a second to consider, even from the top down, is our government really focused on, in an efficient way, in a fair way? There are the police problems, again, homelessness, hunger, anger, hatred, depression, leaders who are power hungry, who get so thrown off balance with their need for power that they don't think straight, they're not logical, and they just hurt us. Look at our jobs. Sometimes we're overworked, we're underappreciated. Sometimes our actual jobs, they're just getting by. They put more stress on you, they have extra stress. I mean, it all starts to weigh, right? Each level weighs on the one below it. And so we sometimes, and it mixes, right? Our parents, sometimes the weight of their children and their worry and their sadness and not knowing how to help them, it's also up there and it weighs on them. But more or less we're saying that this stuff matters and it should be more or less in this order. But are our parents and people, families, really making kids the first priority? And more importantly, do they have a choice? Is it possible, just like the image of Atlas, Ah was the old word for actual God or the creator, Atlas is probably like God hold it, or something to that degree, right? But think of this, think of the oppression, right? Are we gods? Are we superheroes? Can we hold the weight of the world by ourselves? No. Are we really working as parents in society to hold it? Well, maybe we could do better. But can you blame someone who's lifting the weight of the world, of the oppression of their government, the lack of basic needs, our own mental health issues like anger, depression, addiction, greed, and so on, physical pain, sickness? Are they allowing us to really focus on what matters? And again, do we have a choice? When we're so oppressed that the oppression of the things above us are not allowing us to be balanced. How can you see what matters to your kid if you're not even interested in what they're interested in? How do you have the energy when you're so oppressed? How do you care and see how you could help your kids or what they even need? Hey, he's crying for attention, or oh, they need more time with me, or they need to talk, or hey, their moods change. If we're so overworked and we're working multiple jobs, we can't pay our rent, we can't pay our bills. So in some ways, we're looking at kids and we're asking, how come you're not focused on the things that matter, right? Why are you on TikTok? And why aren't you focused on school? And why aren't you focused on other things? And in a lot of ways, I feel we can ask ourselves, if we're honest, the same thing. Why aren't our parents interested in the most important thing? We have no right to condemn these kids for being on TikTok if they're not making the things that value important either. If kids are wasting their time on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube, have we ever stopped to consider that our jobs, that society, that the government, us spending our focus on those things rather than focusing solely and primarily on our kids? Isn't that just like TikTok but worse? Couldn't our kids turn around and say, why are you so focused on work when it's not the most important thing, like you tell us with TikTok? Why aren't you focused on getting us a home and food and medicine? Have our leaders been taking care of us? Have our jobs been taking care of us, where they fight the basics of minimum wage and they fight the basics of unionizing and getting a fair living for killing ourselves? So more and more and more and more pressure. How could these kids focus on what we think is important if we're not even making them feel important? And all this weight of everything above them, whether they say it and we say it or not, is oppressing and holding them to a point where they can't even feel the basic human value of love. How can you concentrate? One of the things I had written in an article, I used to have a blog, is you can't concentrate when you're suffering. And what that means is not only depression, anger, addiction, physical pain, mental health issues. We can't concentrate fundamentally. You cannot focus on the tip of the spear if you're not more balanced. Aren't we sending our kids to therapy wondering what's wrong with them? Why can't they get their values straight? Don't some of the parents, and all of us, can't we benefit from, but don't some of parents really need therapy? Is a child who's being beaten and abused and neglected really the one who needs the therapy, or the people who are causing that oppression and that lack of love? Is the kid sick? Or is someone who's unable to love a kid, which sometimes happens, are they the ones who are out of balance and can't see straight? How are we supposed to focus on our kids when our job is oppressing us to the point where we're working 2 or 3 jobs? We're working 20 extra hours, 100 hours a week, whatever the case. Or when we are so caught up into even fun things, our hobbies, our enjoyment of making money, buying our toys and vacations and other people. Have we made our kids the sole tip of the spear? Can we blame them for not being interested in school and things that we value when we're not really living up to the values we say we have? And how can we and our jobs and the people around us really get out of this if our government, if society, if others are oppressing us? Because you know what else we say? We say we value human life, right? Your kids, but right, all life, we're saying, is really the tip of the spear. Our kids see it and our kids know it. We're not living up to that as a value. We have people being murdered, both in America because of violence, because of policemen who are out of balance with their ego. It's not bad policemen. There's so many policemen and women who are amazing in balance, right? There's a certain percentage, right? We all struggle, a certain percentage of us in everything. Anger, pride, depression. We don't give any time for ourselves to meditate or go to church. Sloth. You could look at the 7 deadly sins as really emotional destabilizers. Things that in the 7 deadly sins, plus pain, physical pain, those things when we get so caught up are just like when you get so angry you lose it and you hit someone. Is it really your fault? Can you really focus on being in control if you lose it? No. So can you really focus on what matters when you're so depressed, you're so angry, when you're so proud, like my theory is a policeman who can't be questioned because their ego, they have trouble with being questioned. Listen to me or I'll lose it. So is it that they're a bad police officer, or that they haven't recognized how to identify people who have problems with their ego? Their power, their authority means so much that the minute someone challenges it, they lose it. The same way when someone's angry and they lose it, they might murder someone. Or the same way when you're so depressed you can't see straight and you don't even value your own life. So again, it's not to take away personal responsibility, but if we lose it at a moment when we're depressed, in pain, starving, right? Angry, these things, like especially addiction, once you're caught up, do we wonder why these people who are addicted can't value their health, their life? They can't see what's happening to them? Because when you're so oppressed by addiction and emotions that leave you off balance, you can't see what's valuable. You can't see straight. But right now it bothers me that we are bombing people for dirt in the Middle East and in Israel. I don't care what side you're on. And I think our kids even understand that basic value that we're not living up to. Are we living up to the value of basic life when we have a homeless crisis and students who need mental health help and homelessness problems within our student and kid population, lack of food, lack of medical care? Is it fair for parents to have to decide at the end of the month, do I pay for my insulin or do I pay for my food? But again, the idea that we're bombing and murdering children, I'm sorry, it's not an exaggeration. We're murdering babies in parts of the world like right now in Israel because it's mine. No, it's mine. No, it's mine. We're fighting over dirt. And I believe our kids understand that value and that it's not right. So we're living up to the values that we say, are we living up to the values we say we have as adults and people who are older than these children? And I think when we really are honest and look around, we could use more therapy. And I would even love to see parents given some amount of money, $100, $200 a week, to go to a church counseling or therapy, not send your kids even. Kids should be optional. Doesn't it, if we're honest, don't some of the adults need therapy and balance and know how to work on our emotions and our addictions and our fears? Don't some of our teachers and our counselors even need some teaching and counseling and learn how to balance our anger and our fears or our pride and need for control? Don't some of our police people and fire people, everybody, don't some of our leaders and politicians need to work on the balance and even understand their mental sickness when they're using fear and hatred and rhetoric to get people in America to turn against other Americans, let alone against anyone? So it's very interesting that we say, TikTok, why are these kids on Instagram? Well, I can tell you in my mind exactly why. Because we're not living up to the values we say we have. And I think the kids know this, and I think they feel it in a very deep way. And it's not until we begin to live up to those values ourselves, and even more so, for these young people to remember as they grow up that they need to do the same thing. We have to hold ourselves and society to what the tip of the spear should be. If we are saying children are the tip of the spear, why are we murdering them in other countries for a piece of dirt or for money? If we say our kids matter, why aren't we telling them daily that we love them, that we care for them, that we want to help them? And again, I just sometimes wonder if it's not your fault. And maybe it's not the fault of the kids that they're struggling and depressed and don't know how to focus. And maybe it's sometimes not our fault, because the oppression of our jobs, of society, homelessness, lack of food, but our emotions, physical pain, addictions, the need to control things and be macho and have an ego. And so you realize, right, if any of this is true, balance. Being as balanced and working on that as an overreaching priority, and sometimes you can't do it, but knowing there's times you can do less work or snap out of it and say, you know what, I am not focusing on what matters. I need to tell my kids and show my kids I'm interested in what they value. What they value. If you find your kid doesn't have a way that you can love them and you're trying to compliment them and be close to them, then do that first step. Value what they value. Okay? We're so unused to valuing us that sometimes we don't know how to handle it. Start with valuing, I don't care what the interest is. It could be boogers. I am a hobby of collecting boogers. You should take that as something interesting and important because it's important to them. We need to value our kids, right? But we need to stop and take a moment to get our balance. And I'll do another video about balance, because if you think of standing on a balance ball, you can learn a lot about What happens when you start to get off balance? What happens when you try to push someone or touch someone or criticize someone when they're falling off balance? Or challenge the way an authority can get challenged and someone can snap. Or someone could get angry and snap. Right? So, if we were to understand how to use the 7 deadly sins, which sounds funny, but if you were to look up the Hebrew translation of sin, it means to miss the mark or be off balance. It's talking about what we're talking about. And we tend to think, no, we know more than those ancient people. What did they know? Well, for thousands of years, they thought about how to be balanced. So, right, aren't these, if we're honest, lust? Okay, haven't people murdered for lust and jealousy? Lust is related to sex. Gluttony. Food addiction, drug addiction. Again, sometimes we're suffering. All we're trying to do is ease the suffering. Greed. People are murdering babies for dirt. Sloth, which is not only your sleep, meditation, but the spiritual. Those who want to believe it, or just taking time for yourself, balancing, easing off the gas pedal. Anger. We murder for anger when we lose it, right? What if it's not just anger that in court, we sometimes let someone have a reduced sentence because they call it a crime of passion. They lost their mind. Well, I'm willing to suggest that each of these has a breaking point that will make you lose your values and make you not think straight. Is it really our fault we can't focus on our kids? And jealousy, especially when everybody else has a decent place to live and food and I don't? And again, the media plays on our feelings, makes you more insecure, so you buy stuff. Makes you need to be cool, so you buy stuff. Our leaders, let's scare them and make them hate each other so they don't think straight. Pride, I'm so proud. If you challenge my authority, I'm going to snap and beat you. Right? And it's so hard to understand. We all struggle with these things to a different degree, but when we let 1 or 2 or 3 get so far, it's going to pull us off the edge so we don't see what's right and what's valuable. Consider that. I would add to this list, there's more or less psychological tools of things that really get, so 7 deadly sins, but if sins means balance, these are the 7 most dangerous to set us off of our balance. So we don't have a value system, or we don't value like our kids. We don't value what's important. We love them. We hope they know it, but we're unable to see when they need to be shown it in different ways. These are the 7 most dangerous and physical pain to lose balance. That is what I'm proposing to think of. Pain, sickness, these are things that also can make you not think straight. It's why you will confess to murder if you're being tortured. Your values don't become the truth and I'll protect myself from going to jail for lying. Your whole value is stop the pain. So what if all of these things are causing so much pain, we're so stuck trying to stop the pain? And what if it's possible that the kids are going through the same thing? And when we have our spear of what should be the tip of our kids and our family and our parents and our jobs and our school and society, can we be honest and start to question? Socrates died for us to remember that if you don't question what's happening in society and if you don't question what's happening in yourself, you're not going to change it ever. So even our government, our society, right? Are we living to the values of the American Constitution right now? And again, we could say, yes, we're trying, but if we're honest and balanced and on the beach drinking a iced tea and we're happy and we're honest about it to look at it carefully, we're not. So we really have to understand, again, maybe we don't need to keep pushing and finding out what's wrong with the kids. Maybe our whole triangle has been turned upside down, but maybe the world and the depression and anger and these things we struggle with are causing them, but maybe it's so many things above us causing it to happen as well, right? So when you think of the weight of the world, how can you focus on your kids when you have the weight? How could your kids focus on school when they have the weight of everything above them on this triangle? Our kids have the weight of their parents' issues, their school's issues, society's issues, and everything around them, as we all do. Right? It's not an absolute. Sometimes the kids and family and jobs, they're all kind of juggling around, and again, we don't always have a choice. What if we really just need to give a little bit more thought to this and balance? and focus on getting to a place where we can see straight again. Because we know what's right, I think we all do, and we wonder even when someone's addicted or so, why are they doing this? It doesn't make sense. Well, because you can't have clear values when you're so overwhelmed and oppressed and when you're beaten down. And then those of you who are religious, I think the idea of what this used to represent of Atlas was nobody can hold the weight of the world on their shoulders, and giving it up some. Have your family help you. Reach out. Therapy, services. Why do we need to clench our teeth and just fight through this alone? We don't. But more importantly, if anyone's spiritual or religious, right? The circle used to represent the symbol of the Creator. So letting a higher power even take some of that stress off. But even just being aware and open to understanding, we need to take a look at ourselves maybe. What if we need to actually take a look at ourselves and not just our kids? And our jobs, and our schools, and our government. And the fact that we say we should value things and we're not living up to those values. And I really feel my entire belief is not a wishy-washy thing. It's not to be cute. It's not to say things to inspire young people. I believe it's a fact. This generation is going to force themselves and us to live up to the values we say that we say matter. Because they're going to figure out how to be more balanced, how to use meditation, how to question things, how to even seek help and therapy. But they're going to be leaders. They're going to be in charge of schools. They're going to be in charge of jobs and businesses. They're going to be in charge of the government and their entire world. And they will live up to an ideal that we don't kill anybody for money. We don't kill anyone for dirt. Let alone we value our kids. I mean, it's almost as if we need a bad disaster to happen and like they think there were cataclysms before and send us all back to caves, right? If we were in a cave again, suddenly we had a meteor hit us and the whole world was like flooded and we had issues. What would these caves do to us? They would bring us back to the most important things, the basics. And suddenly food and water and family will become the most important thing, right? We can't want that. I would never want that. But if we keep behaving in a way that we're not listening to our kids and what they need and their values, maybe we'll end up having a bigger mess than we have now. So I would challenge you to look at the things above you, if you can, and have the courage, and when you're ready, look at yourself. So maybe when we look at that spear, we should consider that maybe we should start from the top down. Trying to find it. Maybe we should start from, let's get our government in order. Let's get our schools and our jobs to treat us fairly and give us decent wages. Let's get back to unionizing and doing things that are going to actually help us be able to value and appreciate the things we say matter, including each other, and our parents and our family, and our kids. What if the tip of the spear valuizes our kids? But what if the tip of the spear of what work we need to do is the government really needs to be the ones that change? Our system of schools and our jobs and our society needs to maybe take a break and look at things. Maybe our parents and maybe our family need to consider how we can be more balanced and more healthy. Because don't you think if parents were healthy and society was healthier and was really showing our values that we have them. And if we had the choice to make enough money, have enough food, don't you think we would value our kids in the things that are important? And don't you think they would value school and us the way we want them to because it's important? So maybe we're trying to plunge the spear in for who gets help and send our kids to therapy 5 days a week, which is good to go sometimes. But if we never take a look at ourselves, maybe we need to reverse the spear and take a look at our government, our society, our families, and just test it out. See whether the kids end up much better and more valued because of it. And maybe we all need some therapy and balance, because we all do. Nobody will ever be completely balanced. Okay? However, maybe if we look at ourselves and what we can do sometimes, it will change the people around us, our jobs, and our society. It's just a thought. But as a teacher and you see the struggles of life and you see the mental health struggles, and the physical pain and health struggles and the anger and the control and the pride, those things really do weigh on us. And we sometimes forget they're weighing on the kids. So as much as we have the weight of the world on our shoulders and don't realize it, these kids have the weight of everything above them as well on their shoulders. And maybe we're not fitting with what we say is important, and maybe we're not acting on it. But again, maybe it's not our fault. But maybe, just maybe, if we're willing to take the time to feel balanced, which I hope to make another video about balance, it's a very easy way to really look deeply into balance and how our feelings interact. But it has to do with standing on an actual balancing ball. And I'll see if maybe some things we can do to help, but I have faith that we, as well as our children, are going to hold us to these values we know we have. And again, maybe some of us need our values put back in order, but more importantly, maybe we need to take the time to be balanced enough so we could remember what matters, like our kids.